After years of financially supporting my parents, I overheard them mocking me as a low-educated freeloader during a Christmas party, so I quietly cut them off and stopped sending a single dollar. A month later, I am Rebecca, a fashion designer, now 26 years old. My roots lie deep in a small, tranquil countryside town where I was born and raised. My childhood home was shared with my grandparents, my parents, and Ashley, my sister, who arrived 7 years after me. Ashley was undeniably the family's darling, the focal point of all affection and attention. Consequently, her desires and opinions often took precedence, and I grew accustomed to fading into the background, a quiet observer of her vibrant world. The disparity in our parents' treatment was stark and undeniable. On Ashley's birthdays, she would be showered with lavish, exciting toys. My own birthdays, however, were often merged with Christmas, yielding a single utilitarian gift, typically an educational tool or a book, rarely anything that sparked a child's imagination. When Ashley joined the local soccer team, our parents became fixtures at her practices and games, their presence a constant cheering affirmation. I, too, had my passions, dedicating my middle school years to the tennis club. Yet, even on the day of my final crucial match, my parents were conspicuously absent. Their reason? They had to drive Ashley to her practice. This pattern of prioritizing Ashley was a constant thread in my early life, leaving me with a persistent ache that often teetered on the brink of tears. But amidst this emotional landscape, an unexpected source of solace emerged. Ashley herself. When our parents would draw comparisons, she would staunchly defend me. "That's not true," she'd declare with unwavering conviction. "My sister is smart too. She always helps me with my studies and she's amazing." A few days after my unheralded last tennis match, she presented me with a small, heartfelt bouquet, meticulously crafted from flowers she'd gathered in the local park. "Well done," she'd whispered, her gesture a balm to my bruised spirit. Ashley, despite everything, was blossoming into a child with a truly kind heart. Our grandparents, who shared our home, were also my steadfast protectors. They frequently chastised our parents for their overt favoritism, always stepping in to shield me. Tragically, their comforting presence was short-lived. Before I even graduated high school, my grandmother passed away, and my grandfather followed her just days later. Ashley, ever loyal, remained by my side, but her unwavering support seemed to irk our mother. Her treatment of Ashley grew harsher, punctuated by chilling threats. "If you keep defending your sister, I'll make you stand outside." It was the bitter grip of winter, with snow beginning to fall, and the thought of Ashley enduring such a cruel punishment was unbearable. I had no choice but to sever that connection, uttering the words, "You don't have to worry about me anymore." After that, Ashley ceased her open advocacy, dedicating herself to sports and academics, seemingly finding peace and happiness under our parents' roof. The consecutive funerals of our grandparents also seemed to harden our parents. When I expressed my desire to attend university, hoping to study design, they swiftly dismissed the idea, claiming they had no savings. Their disapproval of my chosen path was clear. Upon graduating high school, I was left with no option but to seek employment. Still clinging to my dream of a career in design, I left home and secured a position at a small fashion magazine. My primary duties were clerical, but my ambition burned bright. I tirelessly lobbied my boss until I was permitted to assist the designers. Working in an office, immersed daily in the world of professional design, was a sobering dose of reality. But it only intensified my resolve. My aspiration to become a fashion designer grew stronger with each passing day. Every spare moment was devoted to my studies. Visits home became infrequent and brief, met only with cold, dismissive words from my parents. Instead, I poured my energy into weekend design studies, absorbing specialized knowledge through online courses and other avenues. My relentless efforts did not go unnoticed. the company recognized my dedication, and I was finally welcomed as a full-fledged member of the design team. My fervent work ethic resonated with my colleagues, who generously shared invaluable materials and connections. 3 years later, I was confidently undertaking projects as a seasoned fashion designer. 8 years after leaving high school, now deeply entrenched in my career, I learned that Ashley was preparing for her university entrance exams. Her sights were set on a prestigious private university's medical school. Thanks to her consistent diligence, Ashley maintained stellar grades, making her admission seem almost a certainty. Recalling her childhood kindness, I resolved to support her in any way I could. A few months later, the news arrived. Ashley had been successfully admitted to the renowned medical university. My heart swelled with genuine happiness, and I immediately called to congratulate her. "Ashley, congratulations. You worked so hard going to cram school every day. That's incredible." Ashley, with a touch of modesty, thanked me. But then her tone shifted, revealing a subtle concern. "Actually, it seems a donation is needed for medical school. It's not strictly mandatory, but Mom and Dad say it would be embarrassing if someone from the countryside didn't pay, so it would be better to contribute, right? But you know our family's finances are stretched thin with my tuition and living expenses." Ashley herself had offered to manage her living costs through part-time work, but the demands of medical school left no room for such endeavors. While a donation might indeed be necessary, our family's income, my father, a regular white-collar worker, and my mother, working part-time twice a week, simply couldn't accommodate it. Attending a private medical school would be a significant financial burden, even considering tuition alone. I suspected they were relying on my savings, yet I was surprised they hadn't asked directly, instead using Ashley as their intermediary. Despite my growing disillusionment with our parents, I decided to honor Ashley's request and contribute to the donation and other necessary admission expenses. And so, Ashley rented an apartment near the university and embarked on her new life. Her apartment wasn't far from mine, and I was always ready to offer assistance. However, Ashley seemed fully absorbed in her university life, and my attempts to connect were met with increasingly distant responses. Still, she frequently sent requests. "I want to eat this," or "Please send me that." Reluctantly, I arranged deliveries and lent her money, effectively taking over the financial support our parents couldn't provide. Though we occasionally shared meals, Ashley remained detached, constantly engrossed in her phone, except when eating. Any attempt at meaningful conversation was brushed aside with a curt, "I'm busy with studies," leaving us with little genuine interaction. Each encounter with her coldness left me more bewildered. When had we begun to drift so far apart? Today's meal felt particularly strained, as if I had coerced her into coming. Attempting to lighten the mood, I brought up a casual topic about home. "Well, as long as you're doing well, Ashley, that's probably enough for Mom and Dad, right?" At my words, Ashley suddenly fixed me with a cold, knowing smirk. "Of course. I'm a celebrated medical student, and you're just a high school graduate designer. Dad and Mom aren't worried about you. It's a job that doesn't even require a qualification," she declared, her harsh words a painful squeeze on my heart. "What do you mean, doesn't need a qualification?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Just what I said," she retorted. "You call yourself a designer, but anyone can do that nowadays just by looking it up online. Even my friends can easily set up websites. Aren't you embarrassed to be doing such a job? Maybe you should at least get a certification. Oh, but that might be hard for a high school grad. I've worked incredibly hard to get where I am in my job. How can you belittle me like this, Ashley? What happened to you?" My voice trembled with a mixture of hurt and anger. Ashley glared at me with irritation, clicking her tongue. "Mom and Dad say it every day. They say that I'm outstanding, getting into a prestigious medical school, but it's embarrassing that their eldest is just a high school graduate. They say the future doctor should take care of her sister so she doesn't get any more jealous. That's why I reluctantly contact you and dine with you." Her words resurrected painful memories from our childhood. Our parents had always drawn comparisons, often directly to my face. Ashley is smart and reliable, while Rebecca is clumsy, stupid, and useless. Those echoes of the past pierced my heart, leaving me breathless and dizzy with shock. I bowed my head, trying to endure the raw pain. Mistaking my silence for tears, Ashley snorted softly. "Well, I'll be going ahead then," she said, quickly abandoning the table. With her new life at university, Ashley had transformed into a completely different person. Our parents' relentless praise. Ashley's peers are all geniuses, unlike anyone seen locally, must have inflated her confidence even further. Additionally, their daily accolades. "Ashley is truly a genius. You will be a great doctor in the future," undoubtedly fueled her condescending attitude. In the shadow of this adoration, their disparaging remarks about me were constant. It was clear our parents' attitudes had deeply influenced Ashley. As the year drew to a close, I planned to reserve a dinner at a local restaurant to celebrate my recent raise. When I mentioned it to our parents, they insisted, "Bring Ashley home with you?" Reluctantly, I agreed. Ashley seemed engrossed in her studies and training, making this her first return home in a while. Perhaps because of this, from the moment she arrived, our parents almost entirely ignored me, their attention solely fixed on her. That night, they gathered neighbors, relatives, and even Ashley's former local classmates. A lavish spread of dishes was laid out, with ordered pizzas and a barbecue in the garden, and a grand party commenced. Just as I was about to reveal the true reason for the gathering by taking the microphone, my mother snatched it, announcing, "Today, we are here to celebrate Ashley's acceptance into medical school. She will become a respectable doctor in the future." Stunned by my mother's blatant disregard, I tried to interject, but my father silenced me. Then Ashley, energized by the assembled crowd, began to boast loudly. "My mother wants me to come home more, but I'm studying at a prestigious private university, and moreover, in the medical department. So you must understand it's not easy for me to just come home. In medical school, we often need to cooperate as a team, not just individually. So if I alone return home, it causes trouble for others. Everyone asks me for help when they don't understand something, and it's a bit overwhelming." I quietly slipped away into the kitchen, feigning preparation of drinks, yet Ashley's self-congratulatory words still pierced the air. While it was inevitable that our parents and relatives would laud Ashley, it must have been excruciating for the neighbors and former classmates to endure her relentless boasting. As Ashley's monologue continued unabated, a neighbor, clearly weary of the endless chatter, seized the opportunity when I brought out some drinks. "By the way, Rebecca, you're working hard in design, aren't you?" But Ashley and her parents immediately shook their heads, dismissing the notion. "She's trying, sort of, but not much can be expected," my mother said with a hint of disdain. "It's embarrassing that Rebecca is just a high school graduate. She's so different from Ashley." My father readily agreed, nodding. My sister, seated beside them, seemed to bask in the praise, a proud smile gracing her lips. In the room were many individuals who had only finished high school and were gainfully employed, as well as parents with children in similar situations. While alcohol and food circulated, everyone tried to maintain a composed expression, but their discomfort was palpable. The only ones oblivious to the strained atmosphere were my parents and Ashley. I couldn't bear the unpleasantness any longer and tried to slip away without a word. However, Ashley stopped me. "You come back home quite often, don't you? I can come back with confidence because I study hard every day. But maybe you don't mind because you lack both academic credentials and pride." Ashley guffawed loudly as she uttered these cruel words. Even my father, though he uttered a half-hearted, "Hey, that's not a nice way to speak," was chuckling faintly. I was speechless, a volcanic rage stirring within me. Yet, the words that finally emerged were cold and devoid of emotion. "Good for you, Rebecca. You don't have to come back next year," I replied, my voice trembling, cutting her off. As the people around us looked on with concern, I put down my tray, grabbed my coat and bag, and prepared to leave. Ashley and the others were grinning, exchanging knowing glances. "If you're going to say that, I'll do as you say. I'll never come back." On the way to the bus station, I desperately suppressed the urge to scream. Returning home had always been fraught with pain. When I was aspiring to be a fashion designer, I rarely visited, using my studies as an excuse. But as I matured professionally, I grappled with the inescapable bond between parent and child. Ashley was much younger and still a student. It might not be easy for her to comprehend the hardships I faced since entering the workforce. However, my parents had surely worked hard to raise 2 children. Yet, because Ashley was academically gifted, they continued to extol her as a genius while consistently demeaning me. Their childish words still echoed in my mind, fueling both anger and a profound disappointment that squeezed my heart. If I valued my own well-being and career, I couldn't continue such a toxic relationship, even if they were family. I was appalled by Ashley's terrible behavior, and it solidified my decision to completely sever ties with my parents. Several months after making this difficult choice as a new academic year was about to begin, I received a sudden call from Ashley. She hadn't contacted me at all since our last encounter, and now her phone was buzzing with multiple messages. "Please answer." The phone. Reluctantly, I picked up. "Hey, what about my tuition?" There was a mix of fear and urgency in Ashley's voice. I answered calmly, "I paid for the admission fee, donation, and your first year's tuition." "No, I mean the tuition for the second year. The university is telling me to pay it quickly because it hasn't been paid yet for this year." "What are you telling me this for?" Ashley was at a loss for words on the other end of the line. Indeed, I had used my savings to pay for Ashley's expensive tuition. But what I had covered was the admission fee, donation, and tuition for the first year. As a result, my savings had significantly decreased, and I had planned to make further payments gradually. So, the tuition for the subsequent years was, of course, still unpaid. After treating me so coldly, as if we had cut ties, to then ask me for tuition was utterly shocking. The only thing I was asked to help with was the donation, wasn't it? I had only assisted with the first year's tuition because I was being overly generous. Didn't Mom and Dad allow you to go to a private university because they could afford the tuition, unlike when I was your age? Or did you apply without thinking about the money? That's not true, but living expenses and travel costs are quite hard because many of my classmates are wealthy, and I have those social obligations too. My parents helped with that, but they said they couldn't afford the tuition and told me to ask you. The reason I had financial flexibility was significant. I had switched to a major design firm to further advance my career in fashion design. Having established a certain level of success, my salary had increased dramatically. Moreover, because I was so busy with work, my salary and bonuses were accumulating rapidly. I had told my parents about the job change, so they probably assumed, from the beginning, that with my help, they could pay for Ashley's tuition. Furthermore, they likely knew about the donation and thus assumed I could also contribute to the ongoing tuition. So, the savings originally meant for Ashley's leisure and wasteful spending had disappeared. Yet, I no longer felt any forgiveness toward her. It would have been easy to cover the tuition, but I refused Ashley's request. Days later, when my parents contacted me again, I rejected their offer. They spoke to me over the phone with panicked, accusatory voices, which only sank my heart further. At that moment, I realized I could no longer return home. They were only counting on my money, not truly wanting my support as a family member. There was no reason to be exploited for my savings without any genuine discussion. Ashley called me. Almost every day, her voice tearful over the phone. If there had been even one sincere apology, I might have reconsidered. However, her words were always the same. Please pay for my tuition. If this continues, I'll be expelled. I'm doing scholarships and part-time jobs, but it's not enough at all. What do you think everyone will think if a student as excellent as me gets expelled? I'll pay back the money once I become a doctor. We're family, so please help me. The messages left on my answering machine echoed these sentiments. Among them was a surprising statement. If you're worried about not being able to come home, I'll tell them that too. After backing up these messages, I immediately deleted them from my smartphone. Then, I sent a final message to my sister and decided to completely block her contact. I think people who look down on others should not become doctors. Thus, I severed all ties with my family and welcomed a new spring. I later heard from a relative who had been approached for money that Ashley's second-year tuition was somehow covered through scholarships and loans from various relatives. However, there was no longer any leeway to send her living expenses, forcing her to start working part-time. Balancing work with the massive amount of daily studying, frequent exams, and practices proved to be harder than expected. Eventually, Ashley failed many credits and had to drop out 6 months later. I had been assisting not only with tuition, but also by regularly sending money home. After cutting ties last year, I stopped doing so. Without meeting again, Ashley, her pride utterly shattered, returned to our financially struggling parents, who were barely making ends meet. Although Ashley was academically capable, the funds for her education had been completely depleted. Nevertheless, she didn't seek local employment. Instead, she spent her days playing games, venting her anger in isolation. I heard from a neighbor that arguments could frequently be heard from the house at night. Since our parents had always doted on Ashley, they seemed unable to stand up to her. When I saw my parents in the neighborhood, they always looked exhausted. People around them avoided contact, rarely speaking to them. One day, perhaps due to excessive stress, my father caused an unexpected incident on the train during his commute. He made inappropriate contact with a woman standing next to him, was noticed by other passengers, detained on the spot, and arrested by the police. Fortunately, a settlement was reached, and it did not escalate into a criminal case. However, due to this incident, my father was forced to resign from his job. My mother began looking for work, but having only part-time experience, she was unable to find a stable job that provided a steady income. My parents tried to contact me and even attempted to reach out through relatives, but it didn't go well. The content they asked the intermediaries to convey was reportedly intimidating. The relatives understood there were issues with my parents and told them, "Leave it to us," but eventually began ignoring their messages altogether. As a result, my connections with my family gradually faded, and I was finally able to regain a peaceful daily life. From what I've heard from relatives, there are now unsavory rumors about Ashley, who remains reclusive, and my unemployed father, whose demeanor is unsettling, causing them to be shunned by those around them. My mother, overwhelmed by the situation, has disappeared without a trace, and I can no longer get in touch with her. The remaining two, without any source of income, appear to be living almost like homeless people. If there had been a warm relationship with their neighbors, it might have offered some comfort. However, given their previous attitudes, it's difficult for them to garner understanding from those around them. Meanwhile, I am successfully building my career in the design industry. Recently, I've been selected to participate in high-profile projects, marking a significant step forward. This achievement has prompted me to finally launch a plan I've been considering for a while, to take university entrance exams. Since my finances have been improving smoothly, I intend to tackle this challenge once my current project is completed. Looking to the future, I'm also considering starting my own business. I want to deepen my knowledge not only in design, but also in management. I'm thrilled about this new challenge,